Hello everyone, and welcome to Art on the Farm with Mia, Sage, and Jan, brought to you by the Monroe Area Council for the Arts. Today we are going to be taking some clay and we are going to be making 3 different types of pots. Now we are just using craft clay today for fun. This one in particular is Play-Doh air dry clay, the 1-ounce packs. And you're going to want 6 of those for this project. You're going to want 6 of those. And if you like the Crayola air dry clay, the Model Magic kind, that's the best of the Crayola air dry. Model Magic is going to be your better bet there. Those also come in a 1-ounce pack. Or if you would like to get some other clays that are air dry, that will work great too. These techniques can also be used for clay that you would cook in a kiln or clay that you would cook in an oven. So whatever type of clay that you want to use is perfectly fine. These are just techniques that you can use. And air dry clay is most typically accessible for many people. So that's why that's what we chose for today. Now the very first technique that we are going to use, the very first technique is the free-form technique. What you're going to do is you're going to take your air dry clay. Again, I chose 2 1-ounce packages. And first I'm just going to work those together very loosely. And then, strangely enough, this is an abstract art clay pot piece. Once I made sure that all of my clay was nice and fluffy, I'm feeling where perhaps the package was not quite as closed as the rest, because this part feels more like a hard foam, a harder foam. It is not as pliable as the rest, so I'm going to take that out. Now the rest of it feels good. So I'm going to lay that down onto any surface. I'm going to take off my ring here so that it doesn't mess me up. And I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to grab it and squeeze it some. Not much, but some. See that right there? Okay. Now I'm going to gently release. I want you to hold it for a moment and just look at the lines that your hand have made in the clay. We're going to slow down to really study it. Looking at your own clay, what do you really like about the impressions that were made into the clay from your hands? Looking at your own clay, what is a visually interesting spot in the clay? What do you like about that spot in your clay? Now imagine if you were to take this and start turning it into a pot, your own clay. What would be a good place to make a hole to start forming the pot? Look at every crevice, every edge. What is the place that needs a hole to start the pot? What way would your pot sit if you put that hole in that place? Remember, this is abstract. Abstract means it's not going to look like a regular pot. I found the place to put my hole. When you find that spot to put your hole to start your pot, you're going to very gently, and I mean very, very gently, trying to support all the rest, very gently place your hand inside. If you're not careful, especially if you are using some of these foam air dry clays, all of that other interesting design is going to disappear if you're not careful. So as I'm slowly taking my thumb and very, very gently pushing in, I'm being quite mindful of how my pressure is impacting the outside of my abstract piece. In working with clay like this, in particular, you want to make sure that you don't ever get thinner than a thick pancake. So as I'm still only using my thumb to gently hollow this out, if I feel with my other fingers that it's getting a little bit thin, I abandon that spot completely. I leave it completely. Too thin is no good. It'll just cause it to collapse on itself in the night. Not worth it. Not worth it at all. So now I have hollowed out my first pot, my abstract art pot. If it does feel a little thin and you are a little concerned about it, or if your adult says, I'm not sure, you can take a paper towel and I mean very, very gently work that inside to help support it. Again, the air dry clay, most air dry clays that you're going to work with for these purposes of practice are going to be so impressionable, so soft that you've got to be incredibly careful. See, just in working it, it gave me a nice flat bottom. And now that's ready to dry. All right, our second pot, we're going to make a more traditional pinch pot for our second pot. You're going to take the 2 air dry clay pieces. These are 2 1-ouncers. That will be 2 ounces. You're going to work that together just like you did the other one. Only this time, once you've worked it together, you've checked it, then you're going to roll it into a ball. It's a big ball. You're going to do your best to get that ball just as smooth as you can. There's going to be some spots that are not quite perfectly smooth. A lot of times I like to take my hand and do a nice flat hand. Roll it up. just like before, as you look at your ball, there's going to be kind of an obvious spot, most likely. And it's going to say, put the hole for your pot right here. For me, most of my pot, or most of my ball that will be my pot, is incredibly smooth. But I've got this one spot. And that is asking right there. That is asking for me to put the hole right there. Okay. Once you've found that one spot for you, go on and take your finger. Much like before, you're going to gently push. You're not going all the way in. You're just gently getting the tip of your finger in there. From there, you're going to be pushing from the outside and the end. So I'm using my hand like big old pinchers. I'm going in and pushing outward as I dig in. So in, push outward. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Notice how I'm circling the pot. I'm going to do this all the way around. There is no rush. At any point in time, you can pause the video to give yourself enough time. Again, this type of clay, the air dry foamy clay, is going to be much more impressionable than any of the others. It's just so much softer, which has its good things and it has its bad things, right? No thinner than a thick pancake. And note, I didn't just start out by trying to get my thumb right there into the end. I didn't go, all right, here we go. Okay? No. This is going to be a slow process. I feel like I'm getting there. Very nice. Now, if I want to gently widen it out, I can. Just keep in mind, it's a lot easier to widen it out than it is to try to put it back. I'm going to very gently tap it, not slam it hard, very gently tap it. Give it a nice flat bottom. I'm not pushing, and I'm not pushing it from inside. A light tap. It shouldn't sound like Santa's workshop when you're in there doing clay. If it does, something's not quite right. Okay, and now I have my pinch pot bowl. My pinch pot bowl. And even it's not perfectly perfect. Like, look right here. I've got an ever so slightly thin spot. I'm going to have to be really careful about that. I'm very aware of that spot. But as a whole, I'm very happy. As a whole, I'm very happy with my bowl. All right. Cool. All right. Finally. Here we go. Now, with this one, I chose two separate colors. So I'm going to take my first 1 ounce. I'm going to make sure my hands are really clean. It's going to be terrible if I end up with extra color on it. I'm going to take my first 1 ounce and I'm going to thin it out. This is the coiling method. Okay. I'm going to take my second 1 ouncer. I'm going to thin it out as well, like I'm making 2 snakes. Careful not to get them too thin. That one I got a little thin. Because I want to mix these colors, I'm going to twist them like this. Okay. Now I'm going to put it together to make my coil. Now, why did I do that? Because the red and the white create just a wonderful swirl. But there is a peak to how pretty the swirl gets. And if you are not careful, you will miss the peak, and it'll just start turning pink. So be aware, there is a peak to how beautiful that swirl is. And if you're not careful and you're just going, whoa, this is great, you're going to miss it. And that's why I did that first step, to try not to miss it. Okay? A beautiful, beautiful swirling effect. You can even twist. And I see that it's starting to peak. See how it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner over here? I'm about to turn pink, so I don't want to do any more. Now I want to start rolling it to get myself a nice, even coil. You want this coil to be about the size of a dime. About the size of a dime. Now remember, quarter, nickel, dime, penny. Go ask your adult for a dime, because there are some big differences in those. You want it to be about the width of a dime. And obviously you need quite a bit of surface to get your coil of about 2 ounces down to a dime. Be very, very careful if there's a thick spot and you try to pull on it like I just did. I gently pulled it a little bit, because it will get so thin so fast that it'll cause you to have a weak spot in your chain. A weak spot in your coil. All right. So I'm checking. I've got a couple of thin spots. I'm going to try not to worry about that. And try to make sure that everything else is about the width of a dime. Okay. And then I'm going to start coiling it together, or pulling it together. So you're taking this basically and you're making a nice little swirl. See how I'm doing that? Like I'm making a snail shell. And once I get the base about as wide as I want it, then I'm going to start building it on top of itself. See how it's starting to do that? So I'm very loosely shaping it, but I'm also allowing it to kind of come together itself. One wonderful thing, see how thin that got? That was my mistake. I should have been more careful. It'll be okay. Just try to avoid it as much as you can. One of the wonderful things about the air dry clay that dries like a foam is it sticks to itself very nicely as you work. And then as you finish it off, if you want to kind of taper this part down or pull on your end so it kind of gradually goes down, that's perfectly fine if you want to do that.